Well, good Wednesday evening, everyone. Welcome to Bowling with the Pfeff. I'm Andrew Pfeffer. This is a platform to share your unique bowling story. It's all live on our YouTube channel. And if you are interested in coming on the show, feel free to let me know. We are always looking for guests. You can find me on Facebook, or you can email me at bowlingwiththepfeff@yahoo.com. If you have any questions about, what we're doing here or for our guest, feel free to leave them in the chat. If you're watching on replay, feel free to comment in. We'd be glad to hear from you. And again, if you have questions outside of the live broadcast, please let me know. I'll try and get you answers best I can, and we'll go from there. Hey, I want to give a shout out to Cooper, Chris Cooper, who is a former radio guy from where I'm at. I'm in Altoona. He's in the Chippewa Valley here. A former radio guy who does a show called Cooperville Live. It's live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. He does it every evening, I believe around 5 o'clock. And he was generous enough to have me on his show this past Thursday night. We talked about my bowling story, a little bit about the show, a great conversation, and I'm very grateful to have been on his show last week. He has, just like we do, a replay option on his YouTube channel, as well as his Facebook page. So please check it out if you haven't already. Also, subscribe. Give his show a shot. He's got some great guests, some people in music and politics and other walks of life. Not so much bowling, but certainly interesting topics that he is putting up live every day on Cooperville Live. That's the channel. So today we want to get to our guest, and I am very excited to bring on Mike Jakubowski from Oak Creek, Wisconsin, onto the show. Mike, how are you doing tonight?
Fantastic. First things first, do you prefer to be referred to as Pfeff or the Pfeff?
You know what? You can refer to me as either of them. Pfeff, the Pfeff, Andrew, Andy. It's all good.
Answer to most.
Whatever you prefer. We'll if you want to give a couple of them a try during the course of the show tonight, we'll see which one sticks. But I'm open to whatever. You, I'm guessing, are back after the end of the PBA playoffs, which was very exciting to see. We had a winner in Kyle Troop. How did that go for you, being in that venue for all those weeks of competition?
Bolero Milford, just outside of New Haven, Connecticut, about an hour away from Hartford Airport in Windsor Locks, which is right across the street from a famous PBA venue in history that I had worked at back in the 90s, Bradley Bowl. And several weeks of competition for the PBA playoffs. And we're still not enjoying bowling in front of no one, but that is going to end very quickly with our next set of events. But having had several opportunities now to work these pandemic events, starting in Florida with that series of events, the Tournament of Champions, the World Series of Bowling, and then heading into the PBA playoffs. Funny enough, it just seems like a rhythm. You fly into a town, you drive from an airport, you get to a bowling center parking lot, and you go in and you sign the forms and you take your temperature. And so a lot of the things, strangely enough, are the same, even though you are rolling in different areas. But the things that are the same are very comforting. Very much the same crews work from event to event. The same PBA staff is there from event to event. And then everyone has a defined role within the production. So in that sense, it seems normal to just walk in, even if you've never been to a bowling center. It just has an air of familiarity about it. And we go about the business of getting the TV set ready and getting the players ready. And then I have several roles behind the scenes now as a part of our FS1 and Fox programming. So it seems normal, but we know it isn't. And thankfully, that's going to end very soon.
Yeah. You are a PA announcer, player intros, and strike songs. So I want to kind of do a deep dive into this, but I'm going to ask you, I've got some self-indulgent things here. So would you mind?
Please
take a look on the screen. Can you read that for me in the PA announcer voice?
From Altoona, Wisconsin, bowling out of Wagner's Lanes and Bowl Winkles in Eau Claire, the Pfeff, Andrew Pfeffer.
I'm never going to hear that while I'm getting ready to bowl, so I figured this was my one chance. I better take it. It seems like a lot of the time nowadays that your voice, the strike songs, the sounds of the competition are a lot more audible on the telecast. And I guess I noticed that a little bit before the pandemic, but is that by design or is it just because we're now in an environment without fans?
You don't have 200 fans blending that out. That's as simple as that.
Yeah.
They've made the effort to add the production fans, which is a gentleman that comes in. His name is Min. He's a very nice man, and he operates a system that basically has a bunch of playback speakers on top of the LEDs that play into the player area, and he plays the fan noise that is audible on a set and is also part of the TV mix. But it is 1/10 of the noise generated by a good PBA fan. So what you're simply hearing is what we're generating without fans there to blend out the audio mix.
Sure. Yeah. What other differences are there, in doing this, not in front of fans besides, what you just mentioned? You've got the lack of sound there drowning out some of the things that you do. Is it different, interacting with the players or anything like that, the things that we don't see on the telecast?
It's completely different in terms of feel. Every single one of us is used to going to sporting events and having the experience that we've always had. For the first time in anyone's living memory, that has abruptly changed. And bringing that experience back in stages is what we're looking at doing, but bereft of having a live breathing audience, you can't replace that. And so the intensity level is down. You can't help but have it. And even with everything that's on the line, the big dollars, major titles, qualifying for future events, potential inclusion in the Hall of Fame, and all of the general storylines that players compete for, it just doesn't have the same feel. It can't have the same feel. None of us has ever had to go through something like this, and we have tried to replace some of it to at least put ourselves in a position of being able to compete during this interim period before we're allowed to step back into normalcy. And so it's like anything in bowling. No matter where you go and what you do, there's something to adjust to. You adjust to the humidity in the bowling center. You adjust to the lane surface. You adjust to the lane pattern. So like all good bowlers do, they've adjusted to this. And they've replaced the intensity of a crowd with internal combustion and the fire of competition and the want and the will to win. So I would categorize it as just another thing bowlers are adjusting to.
Sure. I would imagine that you can't play favorites because you're working in the venues when these tournaments are going on. But as I alluded to, Kyle Troup just won the PBA playoffs. He's also won the Players' Championship. He's had a remarkable season. For this last title, he received a WWE belt. And coincidentally, I just brought home this guy. Just kind of by coincidence, because this is a prize, afforded to the winner of one of the fantasy football leagues I participate in. Just kind of coincidence, because this is the last time I could go home and see Ma Pfeff, and we were finally, given the gold. Ours is more like a Stanley Cup, where we have kind of custody rights, but Kyle gets to keep that belt. What's it been like to see him have this historic season?
I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think that Kyle Troup came along as an interest, as a curiosity, his style right out of his father's footsteps. I was a fan of the PBA during that era, a big fan of Guppy Troup, Ernie Schlegel, others that brought flair to the game. And so for me, to watch Kyle mature through this process and not only become the guy that's driving some media interest, as I've called it, He's still colorful, but the color is now green, and he's earning every bit of what he's got. And he is now the front runner for PBA Player of the Year, and he's put the work in, and he's done really good work with spreading the joy of the PBA. Many times we just get into situations where, and it's tough. You're a pro athlete and you're grinding to make a living, and there's bound to be the nature of bowling, which is a tough sport anyway with a lot of failure. But for Kyle, I think not only has he really grown into a Player of the Year candidate, but he's not lost himself along the way. And so to be able to have someone that represents professional bowling, not only at the highest levels of competition, but to still bring what he brings, which is a joy and a love of competition and a freedom to express himself through any number of ways, including his style and other things. I love that 1-2 punch.
Yeah. Speaking of, expressing yourself as a player, again, as we talked about in the beginning, they have strike songs. You play those strike songs. How did we get to a place where we have strike songs in these televised stepladder events?
Oh, great question. And it goes back to earlier in my career. I did 10 seasons with the Milwaukee Brewers as the director of scoreboard operations. Oh. And it was at the advent of adding popular music into baseball stadiums. And we came up with the concept of walk-up music for batters and for closers and starting pitchers and other pitchers to enter to theme music. And so I had done that for 10 years as a part of Major League Baseball. We had worked the 2002 All-Star Game in Milwaukee, which, as you know, is the only tie game. And so a lot of interesting things back in my career. So what happened there was I had worked with the Brewers through the All-Star Game in 2002 and into the 2003 season. I left to rejoin the American Bowling Congress in 2003 into 4. And what happened there was the folks at the American Bowling Congress came up with the idea to contest a major championship, the Masters, in Miller Park in Milwaukee. And they hired me, knowing how to work at the ballpark and knowing the bowling background, to put together a show. And it basically evolved over my involvement with the PBA, with the ABC, back in 2004 through 2007. And then I came back to work with the PBA in 2008 as Tom Clark became involved with PBA productions, and he wanted that energy and he wanted that type of advancement in production. And anyone that watches sports, it always amazes me that anyone in bowling who watches every other sport in the world can't put the connection together that football, basketball, 8th grade girls volleyball has music at sporting events. Why wouldn't you do it at a PBA event? And so it became part of public address announcing, part of a game presentation to fans on site, and part of injecting more energy into the players and into the telecast, and to develop the personalities of the players was to ask them, hey, when you strike, what song do you want to hear? And it started in that way, and it's continued since about the 2008 season. So it's been 13, 14 years since we've implemented that. And it was basically my work with Major League Baseball in stadium in Milwaukee that translated to transforming the PBA on-site production into something that was fan-friendly and filled the gaps of silence and kept people energized and motivated during breaks, and finally gave another personality point for the players to be able to have something that would be a part of their presentation. And that's how it came to be.
That's, it's definitely livened things up, both in baseball and in bowling. You also have some work in basketball that you do. And again, in the spirit of being self-indulgent, I didn't go to Marquette like you did. I went to the public school down the street. And they have some excitement brewing right now with a gentleman named Patrick Baldwin Jr. How exciting is that, to have him sticking around in the Milwaukee area, be it not for Marquette, but for my alma mater, UW Milwaukee?
Sure. It's a great school. My brother went to UW Milwaukee. I went to Marquette and earned a degree there in broadcast journalism. And it's incredibly exciting news. I've been with the Marquette University program. It'll be 18 years this fall as their public address announcer, and 11 for the women's program. And I work, my day job is the director of video production at the UW Milwaukee Panther Arena. So that's my home club at the day job. And we were all speculating as to what was going to happen. Pat Baldwin, the coach at UWM, and the program has struggled with having another major program in town, and they've gone through ups and downs. As you know, not too long ago, that was a Sweet 16 team under Bruce Pearl. And so some coaching changes and some other changes. And then with the pandemic happened, it just kind of put the whole program in a doldrum. And for this to happen, for Pat Baldwin Jr. to make the commitment to play for his dad at UWM is fantastic news. It has already almost doubled the season ticket base for the Panthers. I will venture to say that crowds are likely to quadruple, if not quintuple, as far as average attendance for the season because of the interest it's generating and the excitement of a top 5 college recruit coming to play for a mid-major is a big story and a very interesting story, as the whole college basketball landscape has been changed by the pandemic and the transfer rule and many of the other elements. So I couldn't be happier to be in a 2-horse town now with the Marquette program going through coaching changes and a roster turnover. And now our good friends in the UW Milwaukee Panther Arena have legitimate excitement looking forward to this season coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm getting off my tangent now and getting back into bowling, and we got to talk about your bowling story. So how did you start, and how and when, and what were the circumstances for you starting up in the sport of bowling?
It's a classic story. You've heard it from everyone in your age group. I'm a 10, 11-year-old kid. I live within walking distance to red carpet lanes in West Dallas, Wisconsin. My dad gets me a ball in a 1-ball bowling bag, and I walk and I bowl junior leagues on Saturday morning, two squads. Okay. I get out of there. I dump all my quarters into the Space Invaders machine. And after I'm done spending every last cent I've earned on my paper route, I run home, I go to the grocery store, I get a fistful of candy bars, and I'm got my butt in my chair by 2:30 Central Time to watch the PBA Tour on ABC Sports with Chris Schenkel and Bo Burton. And I was one of those players who was always angry when Bo Burton made a telecast because he wouldn't be in the broadcast booth that day. Right. So I grew up as a kid in the Milwaukee area who had millions of other interests, played baseball, worked the paper out, and yet I was a big fan of professional bowling, and I never missed it. And I developed a 2-tiered system of cheering for my favorites, and the first tier was the greats, Earl Anthony, Carmen Salvino, Mark Roth, Marshall Holman, others. And then for me, having a bit of an unabashed ability to share my own personality, I loved the players that came off the page and did their own thing. And that was the bicentennial kid, Ernie Schlegel. And that was Art Trask. And that was Guppy Troop, who I just happened to see on Sunday. And he wore a flashy pair of pants. And I asked Guppy, well, did you get 2 pairs of pants? And are you going to cut them down the middle and sew the opposite sides back together? And so I grew up really enjoying the Pro Bowlers Tour under the days of the 4 channels that were on and the large audiences that used to draw, and it drew me, and I became a big fan. I didn't go very far in my competitive stages. I was a decent youth player, made the Sunday traveling squad, and then didn't bowl in college. But my love of the sport was undoubtedly brought about as a function of my teenage years and carried through. So then to be able to get the opportunity to work with the greatest bowlers in the world after having that background is, of course, a great, fun, beautiful part of my career, which started at the American Bowling Congress. So I got both sides of the coin. I started with the old ABC tournament. I got to meet Joe Norris. I got to meet Dick Weber. I got to meet Bill Lillard and Jimmy Schroeder and all the greats of the Hams beer team era, and Eddie Labansky and Tony Lindemann and many others, and Bob Hart and the great. So I got the ABC bowlers, the team era, all of that type of bowling. And then I became involved in the 90s with the World Team Challenge, which was produced by the American Bowling Congress, and it was between 95 and 97. And that was in the era when not all of the best players were on the PBA Tour. And so I got to meet young studs like Patrick Allen and Mika Koivuniemi and Chris Barnes and Pat Healy Jr. and others that went on to impact the PBA Tour. And in 1997, I got to do my first show for ESPN. I called my first 300 on national television, and I got to work with a young PBA Tour player that was transitioning into television who had 11 PBA Tour titles at the time, a guy by the name of Randy Pedersen. And there's a great YouTube clip of Randy and I doing a show in 1997. So to answer a trivia question for you, I was Randy's first play-by-play announcer back in the day.
Oh, wow. Okay. And what was he like back then?
The same. He's Randy Pedersen. He's everything you want. He's one of those colorful players that I loved. Randy was great on television as a player. He rarely would he would bowl, and his television record was one of the best ever until Tommy Jones surpassed some of those numbers. And then you could just see he had a natural charisma. He was a natural on camera, and you could just see where he would end up eventually.
Sure. Was it tough to get your foot in the door in the PBA? Was there a lot of competition for that play-by-play spot that you ended up with?
I never. That's a great question, because it just kind of happened. There wasn't a call put out at that time. It's sort of like running for president. Sometimes you're the vice president and you just follow along in the order. And so what had happened was we came out of Rob Stone's original run. And then at that point, something called Extra Frame came my way. And this was back in 2007, 2008. And the commissioner of the PBA, Tom Clark, said, would you be interested in developing our online product? And, at one point, sports wasn't on the internet. And the PBA was one of the very first groups that ever put sports on the internet. And that was what was originally called Strike Pass back in the early stages of sports on the internet. And then when I was handed the keys to Extra Frame, it didn't even have 1,000 subscribers. And we built it into a property that Flow Bowling purchased for a very substantial investment. And now I'm very happy to see that the child that we gave birth to is now, becoming an adolescent and eventually becoming an adult during that time. So being involved with Extra Frame, getting a lot of reps in an on-air position, even though not television, being adjacent to the television broadcast, gave me an opportunity to see Rob Stone at work. And for anyone out there that's not convinced about Rob Stone, he is an absolute solid core professional. He gets bowling, and he just gets a lot of negative feedback. I got a lot of negative feedback as a PBA announcer. No one knows more internal bowling than I do, as far as the history, the current game, and what was happening. And then I just got lambasted and creamed with comments left and right. And so to come from Rob Stone into Gary Thorne, into Lon McCarron, there just was an opening that year. And I had just kind of forwarded my name saying, I'd like a shot. How do you interview? What do you do? And then at that point, in 2013, it was the summer of 13, the commissioner, Tom Clark, said, you're the guy, and we're going to go with you this fall. So I went into training mode. I dropped 30 pounds. I got a personal trainer. In as much as knowledge of the sport is the number one thing, it's television. And what I learned early on is you just have to look the part. There's no faking that. And so I prepared myself not only as a bowling broadcaster, but as a broadcaster in general, and then was able to be that national television announcer that I'd always dreamed to be when I was at Marquette and going through that program for 3 complete seasons and many exciting moments and 300 games and trips to Japan and other things that just are unforgettable when it comes to looking back and seeing what you've done in your career. So it was a long road to Chris Schenkel's chair, but I did occupy it for 3 years.
Yeah. What does it take to be a good play-by-play guy? I mean, you talked about some of the criticism you faced, But even in local television, I can tell you firsthand that a lot of people get criticized. That's just the nature of the beast, but there's still kind of a right way to do things. What's that right way to do play-by-play on the PBA Tour?
Sure. A great question, and something that all play-by-play announcers wrestle with. And for all of us, there's a certain nod to the past and what you've learned to the past, and what you've learned and how you would apply that if you're ever given the opportunity. And for me, it was always first and foremost, present it as a legitimate sport, and working with your color announcer that person is the main reason why people are there, to get that insight. And so as you're working as the play-by-play to set the facts, to bring the bread and butter elements of any production together, it's also working hand in hand with that color analyst to key them into certain situations, to get out of their way, to let the show breathe in certain occasions. And so it's just something that you develop over time. But for anyone that aspires to do it, you've got to have lockdown knowledge of the sport that you're doing, and it comes with preparation. And you have to have the ability to manage 18 things at once. With the headset that you wear, you hear the producer and you hear other things going on in your head, and you have to manage commercial breaks, sponsor reads, promos, and then all of your preparation work with player-specific notes, with interviews, notes from previous tournaments, all of the notes that are generated by the department that puts together all of the show information. And then you have to synthesize it and be ready to call upon it at any moment given on each particular show that you're doing. So basically, I would get all my materials together and order some room service, and I would put 4 hours into it. And I would get a manila folder, and I'd transfer notes, and I'd organize things. And then I'd be ready, quote unquote, with the full knowledge that the basic math is if you prepare 100, you're going to probably use 40% of it. Sure. But you never know which 40. So you have to be prepared with the 100. And so having, that ability, one thing I had going for me was that I knew the sport. So like when Rob Stone comes in and gets lambasted, or other first-year play-by-play people come in and get lambasted, I knew what a solid 4-pin was. I wasn't going to call something that it wasn't, and just leave that tinge in somebody's ear that, oh my goodness, this person doesn't know the sport. And so I had other challenges. I did have to look like a professional. I hate combing my hair. I did have to learn how to work with makeup. You do have to learn how to dress right, and get elements that lend credibility to your position. So for me, it wasn't spending time learning how to do a bowling telecast. It was more getting the other elements straight, and coordinating with your producer, coordinating with your color analyst. And actually, I had kind of learned that back in 1997 when I worked with the Team Challenge Series. The same thing happened. We had gone through some play-by-play announcers. Somebody missed a flight, and at the last moment, somebody said, well, Mike's got a good voice. Put him in the booth. And so I got to work with Hall of Famer Earl Anthony as my first color analyst back in 1997. And first time I called a perfect game was with Jason Queen in the 1997 Masters in the semifinal in Huntsville, Alabama. So my early training was Earl Anthony, Mike Durbin, Pat Costello, Fred Borden. So that'll give you an indication of some of the folks I was working with back at that time. And then fast forward sometime later to having the opportunity again, already having a relationship with Randy Pedersen, to be able to jumpstart right into that and develop a rapport, and being immersed in all of the bowling stories and everything, because I had been working extra frame for the last 3-4 years. So I knew the game, I knew the players, I knew my color announcer. So it was an easier step for me to make, but not an easy one, because there's nothing like staring down a television camera when somebody goes 3, 2, 1 and then points at you, and your mouth is supposed to work, and it's supposed to make sense, and it's supposed to every single thing out of your mouth has to be correct. otherwise Joe in Poughkeepsie, will go on Facebook and tell the world what an idiot you are because you did not get one thing right in 2 hours.
Wow. That sounds very specific.
I'm just making up Joe from Poughkeepsie. I can give you the real names because I still, unfortunately, remember some of the more colorful ones. And even I had stalkers, and I had to actually call the federal authorities one time on one gentleman that was particularly insistent about getting my cell phone number and sending me some questionable messages and receiving other threats and just the most insane things you could think of for a guy that grew up enjoying bowling, being given this incredible chance to tell other people about it live on ESPN, and then face the wrath of social media and of an adoring public that has every right to say what they say.
Sure. There must have been moments that were memorable for you for other reasons, though. I guess what were some of your favorites, be it a performance on the lanes or maybe time spent with, like you said, one of those giants of the game that you got to know over that time?
Sure. Oh, so many on the lanes, off the lanes. I'm a bowler. I like beer. What happens after you do these type of things is you usually go out with people. Remember the old days, the before times when you would go out with people and drink beer and tell stories and have fun, and those were the things I loved. And coming up to be able to get to know folks, to eventually meet Mark Roth and Marshall Holman, and to spend some time with them. I was the host. Probably one of the all-time career highlights was I was the MC and host when the PBA had their 50th anniversary. And they put together the 50 greatest bowlers of all time, and almost all of them were there in person. And having a chance to meet all those folks, and I was at a dinner table with Mark and his wife, and Marshall Holman and his wife, and Tom Clark and his wife, and that was one of the most amazing nights ever. But then to get to know people like Pete Weber and Walter Ray Williams Jr. and the greats of my era. One of my favorite stories is walking into a random restaurant in Tokyo, Japan, covering the Tokyo event, the Japan Cup, and running into Norm Duke at random and having Norm go, "Hey, my whiskey buddies!" and spending a good portion of that evening navigating the streets of Tokyo, having several of Japan whiskeys. So the sheer nature of what we love, of what anyone that bowls loves, going to see new places, having a beer with friends, all of those things constantly, and developing friendships all over the world, and being able to enjoy people, places, and bowling on the one side of the coin is one of the joys of my life. And then as far as being an announcer and calling some great moments, calling a live perfect game, Sean Rash did it, the first to bowl 2 perfect games in title events. Always have to get the nomenclature absolutely perfect, or someone will correct you on it. I guess another one of my favorites was when Anthony Simonson won the Masters and became the youngest ever in Indianapolis. Mike, he couldn't make it that day. He was under the weather, but it was on Valentine's Day, and he dedicated it to his mom. And I think he even broke up a little bit on air because it was so cool. And so Jesper Svensson in Oklahoma, becoming the youngest ever to win the Tournament of Champions in an arena at the Firelight Complex there. So some of the competition and not even the show, as what's called, because of all of the extra framework. I saw every A squad for 10 years. So anyone that wants to Mike J this or Mike J that, you want some fun, why don't you come work online bowling with 7 a.m. A squad and 3 squads from where your crew call time was 6 o'clock, because you had to be doing a stream test at 6:40 to get your first ball of competition, cup of coffee. Hey, this is fun. Coming at you, 8 games of A squad qualifying at 7 in the morning. But that being said, I got to meet Alvin Liu, who was a big fan favorite of mine back in the day, bowling on the PBA 50 tour. And so all the great moments don't come on television. In fact, most of the great moments don't come on television. They're a part of practice and qualifying and match play. and all of the little steps along the way. And everybody remembers, the last shot and how great it was and how many people were in the stands. But many, 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 many other great moments happen in the 99.3% of the tournament that a lot of folks will never see or never pay for, because you have to pay for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me see if I can pull this up. What's going on here?
Yeah, one of the great properties that Tom Clark, commissioner of the PBA, developed over my time with the PBA was the Chris Paul Celebrity Invitational, and first one in Winston-Salem back in, I believe it was 2008. So that's been around for 10, 12 years now. And we haven't done one recently just because everything's been so shaken up. But the chance to work with A-level athletes and talent is unbelievable. And Chris Paul, for my money, is not only one of the best guards to ever play the game, but he's just one of the best people to ever participate in professional sports. For anyone that knows his story, he's a tremendous family man, and he has given back to his community through his CP3 Foundation and many other things that he does. And so, hey, let's gather some of my celebrity sport and entertainment friends and put together something on ESPN and now Fox that can help spread the word about my foundation. And so this is me interviewing Chris Paul. And I believe I even had a relevant question for him that had something to do with basketball. Oh, and it was to do with Marcus Howard, who played here in Milwaukee at Marquette, and had asked, because Marcus attended one of Chris's basketball camps way back when. So we chatted a little bit about his basketball camps. But on some of the shows I did, I got to go elbow to elbow with Chris Paul and Nick Cannon and Anthony Anderson from Blackish and other movies and fame. So to work with Chris, to work with his family, his father is amazing. His son, we watched him grow up. And so one of the great unsung properties of the PBA is that CP3 invitation and all the friends that we've made over the years, and will continue to make as we hope to introduce that program at some point back on the PBA tour.
Sure. You talk about the 3 years of doing that play-by-play stuff. Why did it end?
I had an opportunity. I was looking at being a one-trick pony bowling announcer in my 50s. Every opportunity I had to try to parlay, this is a good bowling word, was to, I got 1 or 2 years of experience on national television, and I had made some forays to try to generate other opportunities, whether it be in other sports or something else within ESPN. And so as a function of that, I really became aware that being the ESPN bowling announcer was going to be my only opportunity, barring some miracle that never happened. And when I got a call from somebody I used to work with in Milwaukee that there was going to be an expansion at a place I used to work at, the UWM Panther Arena. I had been there previously in 98 and 99. They were looking to expand and add a minor league hockey team. And they were looking for someone to run the video production operation in their facility. And it was an interesting opportunity. And so I had a hard decision to make. I talked with the commish, Tom Clark, about it, and was honest about where I felt my opportunities were as an announcer. And although completely and utterly thankful and grateful for that opportunity, I had an opportunity also to get back into event management at a very high level. And so, for anybody that's had to make a tough decision and give up something they love, and to kind of just review and look themselves in the eye and figure, where's your best opportunity going forward, I made a really tough call to leave the PBA at the end of the 16 season and work as the director of video production for the Panther Arena. But I guess then the postscript to that is when the PBA left ESPN for Fox, Tom called me back and said, "Hey, you're settled in over there. Fox really wants to amp up the production with the music and some of the announcing you used to do. Would you be interested in coming back on a part-time basis to work only our telecasts?" And so I was at a point where I could, I had the flexibility to make that happen. And so that was an opportunity to come back in 2018 and just help out with the shows. And I've done so as my schedule allows ever since. And then that has gone now through the sale of the PBA to the folks at Bolero and the new production team that has been associated with that. So it's getting to know Coley Edison and her staff and other people, and getting a feel for the type of production that wants to be done, and then so going from those scenarios and knowing a lot of the players has allowed me to have an entree back to something I really love and I still love, which is trying my hardest to tell the story of the great people that participate in this sport and put ourselves in a position for bigger and better sponsorships and more lucrative opportunities for players and for people associated with producing the shows and other shows. And it's kind of nice. It's almost like you have your cake and eat it too, that you have a really solid opportunity as a professional on a day-to-day basis, and then the ability to travel and see friends and be involved and get great seats for PBA events.
Yeah, absolutely. Milwaukee is so synonymous with bowling historically. Now, the ABC, later the USBC, left Milwaukee for Texas at some point, but the roots that you have in Milwaukee, and that, let's face it, both of us have in Milwaukee. How does that kind of guide what you do, and how do you look back upon those roots, when you reflect on where it's taken you in the highest levels of this sport?
I think it just gives me a sense of pride that I was able to be exposed to it here, to find a love for it. And like any good tree that's been around for 50 years, you see some droughts, you see some floods, the tall ones get hit by lightning. And so at the end of a significant amount of time, to be able to at least appreciate the ride, and to have something to look back in the rearview mirror while you live your life today and plan for tomorrow. So I guess that's part of being a part of that culture here, and it gives me just a little extra emphasis on the appreciation for it and the fact that it's gone. Milwaukee has a history with that. The Milwaukee Braves were here from 53 to 65, and then Milwaukee was without Major League Baseball until Bud Selig purchased the Seattle Pilots in 1970. And so there have been some experiences of loss in this town, and it's a great town. And even now, through many various challenges, Milwaukee is challenged once again. And so to be a part of that, to be a part of the longevity, to have roller coasted some lows and to also get some nice high points, it gives you some perspective as to what's meaningful, what do you want to be a part of, what, now that you've reached the middle part and later part of your career, where do you want to spend the time and who do you want to spend it with? And just given all the people I've known in bowling over the years, there's a lot of people that feel that way, and there's a lot of people that challenge that assertion, and still having to prove yourself every time by making positive contributions to whatever aspect of what you're doing, whether it be on site, online, or part of that. So yeah, it also gives you appreciation that if you'd have told me when I was a 17-year-old kid bowling juniors on Saturday morning that I would have been sat in Chris Schenkel's chair for 3 years, that I would have been a Marquette PA announcer for 17 years, that I would have worked with the Milwaukee Brewers for 10, would have worked the night in 1992 when Robin Yount got his 3,000th hit, closed County Stadium, opened Miller Park, worked an all-star game, worked the 2004 and 2007 Masters on specially constructed lanes at Miller Park, came back to the PBA, birthed an online service that became a very nice piece of business for the PBA and later sold to Flow Bowling, and to then be invited back to add a layer of entertainment value to the show as Fox asserts itself among all the other programming. It gives you a real strong sense of pride that a lot of the work that you put into it, while it doesn't necessarily pay off in everyone being able to earn $250,000 for consistently finishing 47th in PBA Tour events like they do in golf. What it does do is assert that, a lot of people have been able to follow their passion over the years and bowl for money on the PBA Tour and get themselves involved in pro shops and get themselves involved with bowling center management and get themselves involved with ownership of bowling centers. And you think of somebody like Mike Fagan and Robbie Spigner and others who have made the commitment to that. So really, it just gives you a nice perspective with which to fight and to block out the daily, because unfortunately, part of what I had to deal with when I worked with the PBA was I was the social media manager. So you just have to unfortunately read and deal with what was the old PBA message board, what currently is the social media environment. And so you get locked into so much negativity just as a matter of your daily business that sometimes it's tough to look at the bright side and look at, what you do have. And so for anyone, that would go to Bolero or the PBA or anyone and say, bowlers deserve more money, or bowlers deserve this, or bowlers deserve that. Well, we've just been through 15 minutes where a lot of people deserve a lot of things. And if you can look yourself in the mirror and say, I compete, I can participate, I can be a part of this sport and earn either a large or a small or a portion of your well-being that allows you to take an extra vacation, then it's not often we talk about, what people put into it versus what they get out of it. And so long-winded answer to it's a multi-pronged pride point to have been involved so long and to continue to be involved.
Yeah. When we talk about Milwaukee, I have some material from someone from Milwaukee. And this is actually going to be history on this show, because normally I'll splash up a quote from people, but I actually have video this time. So please pray with me that audio and video work. Let's give this
I do that every day.
Yeah, let's give this a shot.
Director Mike Jacques from NBC 15 Sports in Madison, Wisconsin. Some people call me Jocko. Some people call me some other things, but that's for a different show altogether. I'm here to talk about Mike Jakubowski. And what can you say about Mike Jakubowski that hasn't already been said? Well, many things. I've known Mike for over 20 years, going on almost 30 years. And if you can believe this, Mike and I used to do karaoke together. We actually were hired to run karaoke at bars and have beverages for free somewhere. We were living the dream back in 1990 something. But Mike and I have remained good friends. I'm so excited what he's done in his career to do all of the things he does for Marquette. He is the voice of Fiserv Forum when Marquette plays there. He's the voice of just about everything when it comes to Marquette. And the biggest thing that I'm excited for Mike is all that he's done for professional bowling. He's been heard worldwide, which scares me at times, but for all that he's done for pro bowling and ESPN and many of the other networks he's worked for, to have that voice go out to millions and millions of people to spread love for bowling, that is awesome. Two stories about Mike. My first one is when we did karaoke back at Johnny V's, we'd play this drinking game. Instead of counting maybe how many people would come up through the bar or sing a song or say a song, say a word in a song, well, we'd count the number of police vehicles or first responder vehicles, because it was kind of a rough neighborhood. So we'd wind up getting drunk because of all the shots we would have to do. And another story about Mike, probably one of my favorites, is that he is a recording artist. No Bueno and Beer Frame Judy. I absolutely love those songs. Mike J. Laneside, you should be a rock star. You know what? You already are. I've talked too much. I love you, Mike Jakubowski. Best of luck. Andrew Pfeffer, I love you too.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Jocko, what a beautiful man. Thank you so much for showing that. That warmed my heart. You just erased 4,000 Twitter posts of disdain with those 3 minutes of joy. I thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. the common denominator here with Jocko, I used to work with him in the sports department of a TV station in Wausau. So I knew you guys were Facebook friends and all that. So I figured I'd hit him up for that. And he came through, sixfold from what I was looking for. But tell us about this whole recording artist thing. Beer Frame Judy?
Sure. Yeah. It's another funny sideline. As a part of all the things that I've done in my career, for 2 years, I was a rock and roll tour manager.
Okay.
With a group called Los Straitjackets. And they play original surf guitar compositions, instrumentals. And the beautiful part of what they do is they all perform in Mexican wrestling masks. And I got to know them. I saw them at Summerfest, and during one of my periods of unemployment, I called one of the founding members and I said, "Hey, you need a bus driver?" And he said, "Well, funny you should ask. We're looking for a tour manager. Can you go out in 6 weeks?" And so I ended up doing 2 years of tour management for a 4-piece outfit, and got to know them as songwriters and people in the music business, and got to the point where my relationship with Pete Curry, who played bass guitar for the group, he said, "I've got a recording studio. Anytime you write a song, come on out, and I've got studio musicians I can call upon to come out for the day, and we'll put together a record." And at one point, I was working on a poem. Basically, it became a song called "Beer Frame Judy." And this was one of those things where I just got destroyed, in bowling social media. Stupidest thing anybody has ever heard. What is this Mike J doing? Bowlers are rolling in their grave. This is just heinous. And so I'd basically written a song, and we've all bowled league, and we've all called upon the waitress to bring us a pitcher. And so I wrote this innocuous poem about a really cute girl that is always in a good mood and brings you beer when you want it. And the chorus is, pour us another round, and recorded it with real musicians in LA, put out a single on the Spin Out Records label. It's available, still is, on Spotify and iTunes and other places. And then I wrote a flip side called No Bueno, and that was at the World Series of Bowling one year when I lost my voice and I couldn't speak for a week. And I had to just run your streaming device while other folks were doing the announcing. And the boss at the time walked by and said, "How's he doing? Can he talk?" And somebody just said, "No bueno." And so, that went on. And it's just like when you watch those movies about, great songs being written, or any song being written, some, silly thing usually gets in front of it. And so I had written these 2 songs. I put out a single, and then I think we released it. And it was just with a really basic video. And it was so funny because it went on the PBA. You can still see it on the PBA YouTube channel. And just the comments that it got were just incredible. And it was funny because the producer, who'd worked with, all of these musicians, and he's worked in music, and I remember when he read the feedback, and he's like, "What's wrong with your fan base?" And I think I remember telling him, well, if I'd have written a song about reverse thumb pitches, it would have gone to #1 on the Billboard bowling charts.
Right.
But I didn't have it in my heart to do that. So, I ended up putting a record together, and then I still dabble from time to time in writing poems, basically, which you can put to music. And then on the last single, I was able to work with the bass player for Dick Dale's group. Dick Dale, famous surf guitar player who has left us, and his traveling bass player wrote some of the music for it. And so it was just what it really was is that I wrote this song. And if you remember back to the 2012 Tournament of Champions, when it was live on ABC and Mika won for $250,000, Bowling for Soup performed on that show. So the full intent was to write a song and then have a popular group record it. And because there's no music about bowling in popular culture, there are no good rock and roll songs. Mm-hmm. And so the idea was, well, write a song and find some group of note that would record it. And then I failed to do that. And so Pete just said, next time you're in LA, just record it out here. I'll put it on track for you. And then they released it. And I used to have copies available on site and sold and autographed a few. It's television production, announcing, songwriting, and then you bring up with Mike Jocko, who's just one of my all-time favorite people. For him to find himself back in Madison after some time out of state, he's a treasure. He's such a good man and a great broadcaster. And I don't care if he does the Brewers or a high school game, he'll give it the same everywhere he goes, every single day. He's a joy. And so you try to find people that bring you joy as opposed to many others that usually operate in the other direction. It's a good funny thing. Is just another sideline of things that I've done. And if I ever had to, I could put together a set with 2 originals and 4 covers, and I could find a band and do it if I had to. Man, I was nervous going on TV. I don't know if I can handle that. Yeah, one good TV thing is the amount of times I did TV, it never got better. I always would about 30 seconds before air, I would just panic.
Yeah.
And weird things would go through your head, and why am I here? What the heck's going on? And then as soon as I got the first words out of my mouth, then whatever clicked in my head and I was fine. But it was always like the sword of Damocles hanging over your head. An hour to air, 40 minutes to air, 30 seconds to air, panic. And then again, make sure you say everything right. Otherwise, Joe in Poughkeepsie is going to have something to say about it to you on the Facebooks.
Boy, I hope I didn't affect you too adversely with this whole thing.
No, as you said, it's a part of the game, and you go on stage and you're going to get some tomatoes.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me what the future holds for you. Do you plan on, carrying this momentum in the PBA well into the future? Are there other opportunities? Do you still bowl?
I haven't picked up a ball in a while. I think I got a pin back in the background here.
Yeah.
That's from my 1-300 game I shot in 1997.
Okay.
So another trivia question is, I challenge you to find another play-by-play announcer that both bowled and called a perfect game in the same year.
Oh, wow.
I did that in 1997, and I don't know if it's ever been done.
That's got to be a small group.
I got to imagine Rob Stone has got a couple 300s in him.
Oh, yeah?
I'll be bowling in the Pedersen. I hope to see you in Milwaukee. The Pedersen is here in town. And so I'll be bowling on Norm Duke's squad. I believe that's coming up soon. Between the day job and other things, it's prevented me from a weekly bowling appointment. But it's all the rocks are in there, except they're all 5 years old, so they don't work anymore, right?
Yep.
I got to go get 10 new ones. And so I still have the ability to compete from time to time. I love bowling. I love to throw the ball. Right now, as far as the video production director at the Panther Arena, we're coming out of the pandemic. Our hockey team just announced today that the Milwaukee Admirals will begin their season on time on October 16th. UWM, as you mentioned, with Patrick Baldwin Jr. will be very exciting. We're looking for nice houses this year in Milwaukee. Marquette will kick in again in the fall. We'll wait to see what the PBA tour schedule brings later in 21 and into 22. And so my calendar is very dense, and I love staying busy. So idle time is not fun time. So if I can fill it with side projects and travel for fun and other things, part of what we're doing here in Milwaukee is a renaissance of sorts. There's a lot of construction going on. And you're going to see things just explode now that we can pull the masks off and get back to work. Part of our complex is not only at the 10,000 seat UWM Panther Arena, but it's also the 4,000 seat Milwaukee Theater, the Miller High Life Theater, and as well as our convention center. And we've just earned a $400 million expansion, which will break ground later this year and be ready for 2024. So our complex is going to be completed with a brand new extension of our convention center, and really we expect the meetings and planning and travel business to be back in full force into 23 and 24. So the day job is fantastic, and Milwaukee is just growing in leaps and bounds, and so many great things happening here anyway for food and beverage and entertainment and fun and culture and museums and theater and movies and Milwaukee Film Festival is tonight. We have a super secret screening. As soon as we're done, I'm going to head upstairs and grab an old fashioned and see what our movie screening is. So supporting the arts here in Milwaukee. The Symphony has a brand new building, which I'm dying to see. Miller Park, American Family Field is full capacity. Our hockey team is back in the fall. Summerfest is kicking in September. Music venues, beer gardens, and I got to mow the lawn. So there's a lot happening. And then when you figure Marquette kicks in for public address announcing, the PBA Tour and other things, love to stay busy, looking forward to whatever comes our way. The funny thing about my career is if you're a fan of presidential history, I'm the Grover Cleveland of yeah, I always do 2 terms, but they're never consecutive.
Right.
And so I've done 2 terms with the Brewers. I've done 2 terms with the American Bowling Congress. I've done 2 terms with the PBA. And so part of what I've done with my career is when you leave somewhere, you do it in a way where people would eventually or even want to invite you back. The current job, I worked for the security with the security manager at the time back in 1997. He later became the CEO and called me 17 years later and asked if I wanted to get involved. So the type of relationships that you can build over time means that you leave yourself open for every possibility. And so I leave myself open to every possibility. We'll see what happens with the PBA Tour. I'd love to do some more international travel. Love to continue to work for Marquette and then see what happens with the day job, as everything now is going to come back. And I think it's going to come back with a vengeance. And I think the business community, the sporting community, folks getting back to work, I think there's just going to be so much going on for everyone heading into this fall that everyone is going to have their dance cards filled.
Yeah, absolutely. I just hope, bowling centers and pro shops are a big part of that. Very exciting, to know what's potentially on the horizon here. I've got one comment that came in. The Utopian Baseball Universe is my guy, Joey Buckles. He is the commissioner of the fantasy league that afforded me the belt. That's why he says the champ is here. Very happy to represent his fantasy league on Bowling with the Fef, and happy to reign as champion of that league, of course. We go off the sheet on this program by asking you to challenge somebody else. Skill level, any skill level works, but somebody else who has a unique bowling story and a passion for the game. So, Mike Jakubowski, who would you like to challenge to be on a future episode of Bowling with the Fef?
This is a guy that's taken his share of lumps, and he's also had his share of great creations that have gone to improve bowling at every level. I got to meet this man when he left the USA Today to take a job with the United States Bowling Congress, and I got to know him very well and work with him over the years. And he's one of the innovative, energetic people out there. I would say I don't believe I've seen Tom Clark on this program, and especially coming from somebody that lives and has made his home here in southeastern Wisconsin now since he moved here. I nominate Tom Clark to go on Bowling with the Fef.
All right. Love it. Tom, if you are watching, please get a hold of me. Let me know. DM me on Facebook, or you can email me at bowlingwiththefef@yahoo.com. It's funny you nominated Tom Clark, because one of our previous shows, we had Nate Purchase, the runner-up in the PBA Junior Finals.
Team Shimmy.
Yep, Team Shimmy. And I was so focused on a tribute to a bowler in the Milwaukee area named Mike Strani that I neglected to go off the sheet with Nate. Nate later told me that he would have nominated Tom Clark. So this is like double the nomination now for Tom.
Double up.
Double up. Our next live stream is coming up on Monday, May 24th, 6 p.m. Central. And we actually have another Tom coming on. This gentleman's name is Tom Cole, who you may remember from The Bowling Game, which aired on WVTV in Milwaukee and later WDJT when it was an independent. I have great memories of the bowling game. I am looking forward to talking with Tom about that show and the success they had. Did you ever watch the bowling game?
I sure did. Grew up with it. Lee Rothman and Tom Cole on the bowling game. We also had Bowling for Dollars and, of course, Bowling with the Champs. So we had competition shows. We had bowling game shows. And then in the middle was the bowling game, and it was appointment television. It was 5 nights a week. I got to know some of the folks that produced those shows, running into production people in Milwaukee over the years. I've even had a chance to tipple with Tom at a local watering hole called Mavericks. So ask him about Mavericks.
I will.
And funny enough, I was working with Tom on a reboot of the bowling game that didn't come to fruition. But at one point, there was a production company in town that was interested in bringing the bowling game and giving it another airing here in the local area, and it just didn't come to pass. But yeah, Tom Cole, one of the great radio voices and one of the great voices of the local Milwaukee bowling. You'll have an enjoyable talk with Tom.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm like I said, I was a big fan of that show when it was on Channel 18 back in the 80s. I was a kid who just couldn't wait to see what was behind those frames. So yeah, we'll definitely have a great talk about that show and all the success that they had, not only in Milwaukee, but in other areas too. Mike Jakubowski, thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate your time tonight.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And just a happy John Weber to everyone, wherever you're at around the world.
There it is.
And one of these.
You've perfected that.
It's all in the family.
That's right.
We had John Weber Day on the set of the PBA playoffs, and take a look on Facebook. Every one of the crew showed up in a John Weber shirt, and it was a magical day.
Awesome. Great.
Hey, thanks for getting Mr. Jacques involved. I'm going to have to send him a dozen donuts in the mail.
Absolutely. Happy to do it. I'm just glad that video played and sounded okay and you could hear it.
It's perfect.
That's the victory for me.
Well done.
Thanks everybody for watching. Be just and fear not. We'll see you on